So hi everyone, this is Dr. Alana. Today is the 5th session of 10. So we're halfway through now for early stage researchers. If you're a doctoral student, pre-proposal. If you're in the United States, if you're a research master, someone who is designing and putting this package together. And we're looking at background, literature review, and methodology, and how they link together. So our first 5 sessions have, this one is the review of lit, which is the last. Just a small overview. If you haven't seen the other sessions, I suggest you watch them in order. We talked about background. What is a problem? What is a problem? First, we talked about habits that get you on the right side of getting this work done. Then we talked about problem statements, problems and significance, which are what cement your work to be of value to your field. And then we went on to talk about methodology. Those two are the bookends for our conversation today. So glad you're all really here. You're here, and getting my screens in order so I can see the people in the room, and we'll get started. So what's happening this week? We're going to talk about methodology. How did it go last week? Do you have any insights? Have you talked? One of the suggestions that I made was that you talk to people who are just recently finished, and you find out what their experience was like and where they stalled when they hadn't expected to stall, and how that worked. Because you should know not only the specifics of how you get this work done, but what the whole process is like at your university. And then I have some questions just about methodology. So we'll do that in a minute. Now I'm going to drill into the practical issues of review of literature. There'll be some homework. And if you have any questions about today or anything else that has come up in your work, I want to remind you, you can go to wooclap.com/summerqs. Any questions you put in by tomorrow morning, well, by tonight, my time, tomorrow morning, probably early your time, will be included in the tomorrow's open office hours. You can register for that and you can get your questions answered, because you'll get the recording whether or not you're able to attend. All right, so let's talk. And this is by typing. There's lots of you in the room. Give me a maybe a 1 through 5. How's it going with this idea about methodology? Are you secure in it? Do you feel like you've got all the pieces in place and you can talk about your data collection and your data analysis and how it goes with the rest of your questions? Is it more? That would be a 5. If it would be a 3, if it's got some wobbles, but you're on a pretty clear course and you just really need to take the time to sit down and work it out. Or a 1 or a 2 if either you haven't started it yet, or you are just a little still needing to backtrack and look carefully at those other discussions. So if you're at the backtrack level, if I'm seeing 1s or 2s, then I would ask you to seriously sit down on this web address, wooclap.com/summerqs, and just one at a time, just write out all the questions that just don't quite make sense. And don't worry about whether or not the question even makes sense. Just stab at the problems. And then you'll have some really good, I'll be able to help take you to the next stage. Another thing you can do is go to the forum and do the same kind of thing. I'm here, I want to study this, but here's where I'm breaking down. I don't see how I'm going to get a population that goes with my significance, or I'm not sure how the methodology really hooks to the significance or whatever. So it looks like just reading. So anybody who's a 1 or a 2, please make a commitment to yourself to spend some time with that WooClap address and get some really good questions in, and we can start to get those answered. For those of you who are 3s, And Tia, I'm very happy that you started this by asking how to go to the forum. So you go to, I'll even give you the full URL. You sign into the website, and I will, and you can go there. You can go, that's the general forum, and you can choose the conversation on designing research. And you can tell me what you want to research, what you think your methodology is, and the questions that you have. Alan has asked, am I going to comment today on using citation managers? And I'm not, but I am going to give you, I can real fast look it up since I've got the site open. We call them bibliographic software. And if I look up on, if I do a search on the right-hand side of the site on bibliographic software, I'm going to give you that link. And Pat also is saying this is a good one. So go to the site, click on that link, or just go to the right-hand side of the search and type in bibliographic. And you'll get a lot. I've probably done 3 videos on bibliographic software usage, general tools that will get you started. And once, I guess I probably did this a year ago, so a few things have changed. I use EndNote. That's the one I've used for years. I've used others. You'll see during these webinars that other people were suggesting others, and there was some conversation about other choices. But the most important thing when you're talking about citations, I'll just tell you, is how you organize the groups that you put the citations in. Because, so one way to do it is to have chapters, if you're doing a 5-chapter dissertation, to have chapters 1 through 5 on the group side, and then as this reference makes sense to go in there, you just slide the different references into the different chapters. That way you know you were thinking at least about using those in those places. You can also use those references topically for your lit review, other things. So go, Alan and Pat and whoever else is curious about bibliographic software, I would ask you to do that search, to watch those videos, to have ideas, and to either put up your questions in the forum or in the summer QS, or next week when you come here, and we'll delve into it a little bit more. And as Adele is saying, the first thing about choosing is, what does your university give you? Because they will give you the expensive ones at low or no cost. And some of these will have student licenses as well. And generally the ones you pay for are the best. They have some things that obviously the ones that are open source or free are not so good at. Oh, it should. Tell you what, Tia, if it doesn't giving you a link, just go to the search and type in bibliographic. It could be that search URLs don't come through when they're clicked on. Okay, this takes us then into the conversation that I hope we have more of, which is, how's it going with methodology? You've said you're kind of halfway there, most of you. Have you talked? This is a good one for raising your hand in the chat box. If you click on the chat box, your hand will come open. Raise your hand if you've talked to others who have graduated about their experience. And if you have, if you would just type in for other people in the room, what's the one thing that stood out for you in that conversation? What did they say? So it's useful to know what other people who are graduating are saying. Okay, so few people have talked to people, and we'll be looking to them to just tell us what they heard. And if you haven't done this, go to your supervisor, ask them who's recently graduated. Took more time than anticipated, especially at the end. You think I'm on the downhill slope now, but it might not be the downhill slope for universities. Hear that a lot. Need to consider feasibility of data collection for qualitative. Oh my goodness. feasibility for data collection everywhere. And if you have any questions about that, I am happy if you say, this is my design, this is how I think I'm going to collect data. One of the things I will tell you back in the forum is what challenges you have with that. And the other says you're doing way too much work. So might be, Ellen, that you're a perfectionist and you're trying to get everything perfect before you turn it in. And then once you turn it in, everybody is going to tear it apart anyway. So maybe you don't need to spend a lot of time in lit review. We're going to hopefully cut back on that today. My friend told me that it will take some time, prepare accordingly. The lit review will try to cut back on the amount of time, be organized and plan. Always have, if you're going to get your data this way, always have a plan B, because data is hard to get to come in. A little every day is better than a lot at once. Don't forget to schedule time for yourself, for your health. Those are really good. Adele, you talked to a really helpful person. Start early on writing. Start early. Get some pieces in place. Just keep it in the background. And there you go. Okay, so that was a good conversation. Thank you very much for being willing to have that. Now, another question is there a tone? Do you understand how the tone of methodology writing? Each one of these chapters has a different tone. So your background, the tone is, this is almost like a salesman trying to sell you something. It's excited. It's you're passionate about what you want to do. You're passionate about the fact that it's going to be good for your field. A little bit of that passion shows up. In your lit review, you are organized, and we'll get to that in a minute. And you're walking people through step by step a very concise understanding of the lit that applies to your study. Not all the lit you've read, just the lit that applies to your study. But it's structured, it's considered, it's uses the best of your brain, but not so much your heart. Methodology, matter of fact, brain, step by step, clear, concise. This is what I'm going to do. This is how it's going to go. This is what, like that. Okay. So that's a little bit of discussion for today. And I just, and Karen, that's not a bad question. Karen asked, how do you plan if you don't know what the steps even are? Okay. So let me just point out something. I'm going to go back to the screen share. Yes, you probably all have courses that you took, and those courses probably told you so much. If I go to screen sharing, hopefully I can go to screen sharing. Ah, there it is. I'm back in the pd.education site, and I'm going to go to this 1, 2, 3, fourth one over, search by phases. If you want a step-by-step process as either a master's student or a doctoral student to get done, we have it laid out for you. Minor milestone by minor milestone. And the reason we did this was because we saw that universities tend to talk in major milestones. Have you got your lit review done? Have you got your methodology done? But within each one of these, there are lots of little steps. And that very smart people were getting lost because nobody had given them the map. So they're the maps. And you can click into them. In fact, they're even done as a map if you want on the right-hand side. And you can work your way through. And I've had people say that they thought they were all on top of things until they went through the map and they saw that they'd skipped some very important steps. And that was why they were having trouble later. So in case that's helpful. Okay. good conversation, good catching up. Now let's go on to something new. The practical ideas of writing up your review of literature. The word here is practical. The first thing I want you to do, and this is your homework actually, is to do this chart for yourself, because you'll have specifics under those. But I'm talking about the review of literature as though it's the centerpiece between two bookends. On the one side, you've set up the statement of problem and significance to your field, to your region, to your local. And you've done that in your background section. And that's true no matter whether you're doing an article or a chapter or a full something else. That's what background amounts to. On the other side, you have your methods of how you're doing your data, whether you're in the lab or you're doing a simulation or you're collecting data in either a qualitative or quantitative way. Those data will be analyzed, and you will have some population if you're people, but you always have some bigger amount of data you could get, but you choose a smaller amount of data to prove your case. Population and sample are how we discuss those things in humanities. So in the middle is your review of literature. And I'm going to suggest for those of you that are, some of you have this pretty well organized by your field. So if you're doing lab research and especially if you're doing research and somebody else set that up, you just absorbed it and you're writing it up as per how they wrote it up, and you kind of are, have an advantage here. But if you're making this up as you go along and you're trying to figure out how do I discuss this review of literature, you have to organize it in a way that walks your reader through it step by step. That's your first goal, is how am I going to organize this? And I'm going to suggest that for some of you, the Reason and Rigor book on conceptual and theoretical frameworks, this is edition 1 on page 10. They say that a conceptual framework is comprised of 3 primary elements: personal interest, topical research, and theoretical framework. If that's of use to you, if you are in a field where conceptual and theoretical frames are something that you have to kind of hook your stuff to, then I say jump on conceptual as they define it. That's Ravitch, R-A-V-I-T-C-H, and Riggan, R-I-G-G-A-N. And tell your reader you're organizing your lit review as a conceptual frame is defined by them. And that your theoretical frame is this. And what is a theoretical frame? A theoretical frame is the ground you stand on. So if you're an empiricist, you're going to get lots of data because you believe everything can be analyzed, and you probably are doing a quantitative study. In fact, I'm sure you're doing a quantitative study, or we'll have a lot of numbers as part of that because it's a lot of data, and you're standing on the fact that things are measurable. I'm a pragmatist. I care that something can be done. It's useful after I'm done with my research. So if it's not useful, I'm not going to include it in my lit. I'm not going to talk about the philosophy behind stuff. I'm not going to talk about other things that aren't used to get something done. Those are 2 very broad headings, but if you're a critical anything analyst, then you are looking for the data that other people haven't found yet. You're looking for the story not yet told in big stories that thought they were told before you came along. Those are the criticals. So whatever your theoretical frame is, it's let your reader know where you're standing. Then on top of that frame or under that frame, you have your personal interests. And this is useful because You might be interested in something that's an adjunct to your actual research question, but it'll come in handy. For instance, you might be studying something about in interactions between people, but you have an interest in leadership. And if you include it may be necessary when you come to your discussion to include some leadership literature, because that frames your ideas about how you're discussing things. Is that making sense? We all are in these big fields. Like I'm in educational leadership. Within educational leadership, I care about PhD completion. Within PhD and master's completion, there are all kinds of subheadings, socialization, this and this and this and this. And so I carve out what I'm doing either theoretically or as my personal. And then I get to the topical lit, specifically other people who have researched PhD completion. So the topical lit, if you'll see the green line, goes back to the significance that you said in chapter 1. So let's look at how these go together. Your statement, your problem statement, all of that may go to your topical literature as well as your significance. The local significance may go to the gaps in the literature, because you may say, well, we know this in urban populations and we know this in whatever, but we don't know what it's like in a town or a rural area. So my significance is rural, so I'm going to put it in there. So you can draw lines. You can draw lines the other way too. Your topical lit should lead us, people who studied this before likely have studied it in certain ways, which for either because you're replicating them or you're doing something completely different, leads to your methods of collection. Your topical lit also leads to the other things. Your chart will be different than my chart, because I was kind of making it up. But those things will have lines. And if you draw this out, and I'm suggesting you do for your homework, it will be a good thought lesson for you. And you can put in the words. So your theoretical frame is what? And how does that play out? For instance, because I'm a pragmatist, my theoretical frame would have direct effect on my methods of collection, because I like action research. I like to get something done as I do research. Okay, so you, individual person, but these ideas will be very helpful to you. And if you get them down like this, you can write about them coherently. And more important than that, you can show them to your supervisor. You can have conversation. Your supervisor then is no longer in a position just to take a piece of writing and hand it back with its flaws, but rather to look with you at how you're putting it together. Bigger conversation might be more useful to you in the long run. Second thing, I'm going to jump into this. Again, we're going to go to the screen. This time we're going to the front page. Does somebody raise your hand if you are in the room and you want to be a guinea pig today? You want your research design fairly well thought out, can be talked about in just a few sentences. Not a long, like if you have to explain it for paragraphs, you're not a good one for today's work, but you would like to see somebody else think out the logic of design tool with your research design. If you put anybody who puts their hand up, Robert. Okay, Robert gets it. He got there first. So we're going down to the bottom of the site on the left-hand side where we list all the self-assessments. The last self-assessment is the logic of design tool. Robert, I have to find you on this list. There you are. I'm making you a presenter. Somehow it's being a little difficult. Maybe it's because your hand's up. Let me put the hand down and see if I can make you a presenter. There we go. Okay, Robert is going to get his mic on, and when he does, we'll ask him about his research. And what I want to take you through here is the subtleties of this tool. Because people tend to say, oh, yes, I've got it, and they haven't looked at what we mean. Hey, Robert.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Okay. Thank you very much for being our data today. And tell me, what is the problem your research will address?
Well, I have here the problem my research will address is, will an urban school district's adoption and subsequent utilization of the District of Innovation law ultimately improve student outcomes across all demographic groups?
Okay, so hold on. Will an urban school district and then adoption of a particular policy, what's the policy called?
District of Innovation.
District of Innovation.
Or DOI as it's normally called.
Okay, we'll just say DOI because it's easier to type.
Exactly.
Will the urban school district's adoption of DOI result in what?
Improve student outcomes across all demographic groups.
Improve student outcomes across all, what groups? Student groups.
Yeah, student groups.
Okay. All right. So first thing, everybody, and I'm just going to talk you through the specifics of this. The question is, what is the problem your research will address? And he did not give us, he asked a research question, but it's not a problem. So Robert, what's the problem? He's walking around. Did you hear me?
No. My wife is on a webinar of her own.
Yeah. Well, that's what we all get when we're working remotely. So tell me, what's the problem, Robert?
Well, when I did this, the problem was District of Innovation is a hot topic right now. People are using it to fill teacher positions on campuses, but has it really had the impact that it was intended to do, was to be more innovative for instruction to improve test scores and student outcomes?
Still a question, not a problem, but we're getting closer. So it's a hot topic and is filling personnel slots.
That's what it's been used for primarily.
But it's indistinct whether or not it's improving outcomes, right?
That's correct.
So the problem is the indistinctness. Okay. You have to have a problem. You have to have something somebody can jump onto and say, this is a problem. Money is being spent, but it's indistinct whether or not it's doing the right job. That's a problem. The indistinctness is the problem. It's what you need to measure.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Did something go off in your head that went, oh yeah, I get it?
Yeah, bells and whistles. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. All right. So it's filling personnel slots, but it is indistinct.
Yeah, the student data that's out there doesn't give you any indication that this has
Whether
improved student outcomes.
It is improving. All right. Now he's added something else. Student outcomes. What he just added is data is indistinct. So what we would say is this school district, so you could have two pots of data. You could have this school district is a DOI school district, and before DOI, these were the test scores, and after the DOI, these are still the test scores.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's indistinct, and you have data for it.
Yes, we have. All the data we have, all the student test scores from STAR testing. That's the primary indicator of whether or not this has worked.
Okay, so you first thing is when you write your problem area, you write those scores. You write, for instance, in school district A, prior to DOI, this, post DOI, that. School district B, if you're going to do multiple school districts. Wherever you have data, your problem shows is the data. And everybody, I want everybody in the room, no matter what your area is, to realize that if it is a problem, we should be able to measure it. There is something there too often, if people go to proposal and they fail proposal, or a person just won't let them out of proposal to even get to the defense stage, it's because there's something indistinct there. You keep getting responses back that ask you more questions. You don't know what to do with those questions, but the drill down fact is you haven't given anybody something solid enough to play off of. So Robert, in your case, the solidness will be data. And then I'm just going to put in here data shown. Okay, so now we're going to, and everybody, this is how you use this tool. You write what you think is right. He had me to coach, so that was a little unfair advantage. He would have just brought in this first sentence. And then you say, is the problem easily described in a sentence or two? He might have said yes, not realizing what he had in his first sentence was not a problem. But now that we have a problem, and we have the problem with data when we ask, is the problem easily described in a sentence or two? Robert, yes, no?
Well, what I had, no. I need to rewrite that.
Actually, no, but now it's okay. With those sentences, it isn't perfect. It isn't your problem statement, but right now you have everything that makes a problem. You have the fact that there is data that shows that something is up, and you've asked a question. That's how you're going to get to the answer. So I could say yes to that for this. Is the specific context of your study mentioned?
No.
So where are you going to throw in? Where is this urban school district?
My topic is the impact of District of Innovation on a suburban school district in Harris County, Texas.
Okay, so we have to put in Harris County, because our problems are only problems in the locale where we can measure them, everybody. They're not problems in the world. It's a problem where you can measure it. So that's why it asks that question. Can you collect your answers from people, equipment, archival evidence, or tools enough to answer your questions or test your hypothesis? What do you think?
Well, I can.
You can. Okay.
Yes, because, Harris County encompasses the Houston area, and there are a ton of school districts that surround Harris County who have adopted the District of Innovation model, the DOI model. So there's plenty of data to back that up. I may have to scale back on the data now because there are about 15 to 18 school districts that are DOI, and so that's a lot of data to have to go through.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Do you have easy access to those people, equipment, and archival evidence?
Yes.
Okay, so he made it through the first box. What I wanted everybody to see was that you don't, just because you think you're on it, really look at these questions carefully. Okay, so you hit continue. What question do you want to ask? Well, you want to ask that first thing you told me, right? Will an urban school district in Harris County? So I'm just going to copy it, paste it right in there. If you think you know the answers, what hypothesis can you suggest?
As of right now, my hypothesis would be that District of Innovation, DOI, has no measurable impact on student outcomes.
Okay. The reason I asked about hypothesis, whenever hypothesis works when you're using big numbers and you're using quantitative data. Hypothesis says, as he said, there's no measurable outcomes. And then you look at all the data, you do the correlations, and you show that some districts that have DOI show that measurable outcomes, others don't. Is it a significant number that do? No, you have a quantitative analysis thing. Is that what you want to get to, or do you want to get to the why it's not working part?
Basically, I just want to get to, does it work or not?
Okay, then this will get you there. All right, so then, or it'll make you raise a question other people might want to answer. is there a relationship between the problem statement and your hypothesis or question? So yes, there is. You're looking at the same thing. You're looking at it from the same place. You're using data to show that it appears to be indistinct. Your hypothesis is that there isn't measurable impact. Now, I would have a question for you. They are so much the same thing. I wonder if there is really any question. Because if you already have data that implies that it's indistinct, what will your study do that gives you more information than that?
Not sure.
Okay, so you don't want to answer your own question with the data that sets up your problem. One possibility is that you could ask a slightly different question. If the improved outcomes don't show up, what do people think is the cause? And then you could do some interviews and you could get some data from people about what's going on, and that would be different than the data. That's just an idea.
Well, that's the other part of what I was getting to, is I'm going to be interviewing people and asking for their perceptions of the impact of DOI on their district relative to test scores.
Okay, so you have hardcore data that says yes or no. So you can't ask people again the same question. What do they think? Okay. Do they think? Well, the data shows. So what do they thought? No matter what they thought, it doesn't matter. But you can ask people for perceptions. So everybody, big thing to keep in your mind. What is quantitative data good for? It's good for giving us big pictures of a small amount of things. So his correlation is perfect. Here's school districts, they have the money. Here's their test scores, they've gone up or not. That's good. Small amount of data, he can get a lot of things. Then he can drill in to the 2 or 3 school districts that will give him data that will respond to his questions. And he can ask some people as to why, what they think is going on there. And then he's adding to it. So that's a possibility here. So do your questions address the heart of the problem? What is the heart of the problem, Robert? Is it going on, or is it what are you really trying to get to with your question? Is this a useless law because people are using it wrong? What do you really want to get to?
Is this a useful reform methodology? Because we've been trying to close the achievement gap for a very long time. Is this something that's going to work, or is this just the latest in a series of attempts to reform education by closing achievement gaps by using DOI?
Okay, so that last part was bias, because that last part gives us a really strong, way too strong indication of what you think. But if we just ask the question, what do people who are administering this think is the greatest potential, and how are they striving to meet it? Something like that. You can get to the whether or not they think if there's any, but you can see what I'm saying. However you phrase your question, phrase it in a way that leads people to give you both the good and the bad answer. So you're as an unbiased observer asking, what do these people think about this law that they're implementing? And how do they explain the lack of test scores? And do they think this is going to turn around if they keep implementing this? So you're asking people, okay, so are you confident that the data you collect, so I'm just going to put in needs to be rewritten with human story in interviews or surveys, or both. You can survey everybody, and then if they answer your surveys, you can go back for an interview if they give it to you. Another thing I want everybody in the room to realize is it's hard to get data. People don't want to give it to you, and so they might take an anonymous survey. more than they would talk to somebody who would get their name on it, or do you see what I'm saying? So you have to think through the humanity when you come to your, but let's say he can say yes to these. And I go on to the next question. How will you answer your questions and to whom? So you're going to, if I've heard you right, let's just say you're going to talk to administrators, to people administering this money. Do you think that's right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you're going to talk to people administering this money, and that means that your data is going to come in either either a survey or interviews or both. That means you're going to have qualitative data that's going to cross-correlate with the quantitative analysis, which is pretty simple analysis. You got money, your test scores did what? So you're going to really be doing a qualitative study. How will you analyze your answer? Do you know anything about qualitative analysis?
I need to go back and review it. I know a little bit about it, but
Okay,
I'm not an expert on it by any means.
Nobody will tell you, nobody who hasn't done it will be an expert. And once you've done it, you'd never say you were, because it's pretty complex. So you're going to do if just using the words of our grounded theorists, you might do open and selective coding, which means that you read through it once and you kind of see what's there, and you look for cross-comparative studies, and you might select out people who think in certain you might decide, oh, there's 2 or 3 themes of what they're saying. You go back and you selectively code for those themes. And for everybody in the room who knows that I really like the work of David Boji, his tapes will tell you about, some words I've forgotten at the moment, but when you go look for those who disagree, I have to agree with David on this, that as qualitative researchers, we tended way too quickly to hear what we wanted to hear and build the story we thought we were building, and we weren't nearly strong enough on looking for people who disagree with us. And when you look for people who disagree, you get a bigger story. You get a bigger answer than if you just go for your original questions. So, so let's say he wrote this up, and let's see the assessment. And here is the place. Now you've done 3 boxes, and at the 3 boxes, you have to go upwards. Will the data that you collect here, which is a survey or interview, will it answer the questions that give you the human story you thought you were going for? And will it really get to what you want to say, whether or not DOI is in fact has potential for really getting to this student assessment gap? And so you have to look at these 3 boxes and how they go together. This is a real short way. If you work these boxes, you take this 10 minutes to do this in your head. Then when the last question is, Robert, do you think this will lead you to be an acknowledged expert on this topic?
Yes, because in my initial lit review search, there's really nothing out there about the impact of DOI on suburban school districts.
Okay.
I've seen other reform methods across the country, but nothing like what we're doing here in the Houston area, Harris County.
Okay, so then you will have to have lit on all those other topics and all that.
Right.
Okay. So
that's what I've written to this point.
Okay, so here's what happens. Go through your other boxes and pull out the items you need to discuss in your literature. And this is the step I don't think people first time through this tool do well. So we're going to literally go for 2 or 3 word things. You're going to need lit on urban school districts adoption of DOI. And if you don't have urban school districts adoption of DOI, you're looking for lit on DOI, and you're looking for other people's lit on urban school districts adoption of other things. So your cobbling together for your reader a jigsaw puzzle out of the words. So how DOI is used, there may be lit on in DOI maybe have been written about how people are using the money to fill personnel slots, or probably school districts have used other money to fill personnel slots in the past. So you're going to look for lit about the use of federal funds to fill personnel slots. You're going to look about you're going to have a lot of literature on improving student outcomes. What has been tried, what has been shown, what works, what not works. That's the background to your study. Then you go into the second box. And again, it's the same lit on measurable impact. And then the third box is it has something here about people administering the money. So you may have some literature on financial issues of urban school districts and the use of federal funds to fill those.
Okay.
So you're
just a point of clarification on that.
Yeah.
District of Innovation doesn't tell school districts to spend money on hiring people. What it does is it allows school districts just to hire a person that's not certified as if they were.
Okay.
So
that pretty much in today's world could be similar. Anyway, you're going to go through this.
Yeah.
You're going to go through this and you're going to type in piece by piece the lit you want. And then when you hit finish, finish. I get this thing, oh, I have to type something. Won't let me finish until I've typed something in the boxes. Then when I hit finish, it's going to tell me that it's coming up now, but it will give me a PDF. So when you all do it, it'll give you a PDF and you hit continue and you have it.
Okay.
If you want to put that PDF in the conversations in the forum, I'll take a look and I'll help you figure out whether or not all the pieces, or did I see the answers make sense from this point of view. This should do two things. One, it should make you work really hard on aligning all your parts. That's very useful work. And anytime you change any one of those parts, you should go back and do this realignment, because change one thing and the whole mobile changes. The other thing sounds like maybe you've had that experience.
Yeah, and I'm about to go through it again.
Okay. So then the other thing is it should give you a basic lit work for what's going to be on your lit review. And that's our topic today. So
then that will help me to take out what I take out. Okay. Thank you.
Exactly. Okay. That plus what we just did plus this will help you take out. Okay. So you're on your way. All right. Thank you. All right. I hope everybody, I hope that was useful to see the thoughts that go behind it. And the only time I've ever been able to do that is to go back and forth with somebody. All right. What else do I need to say about lit? And for those of you who are in completely different fields, the thought processes are the same. And I'm happy to take some of those in the forums. Okay. And obviously they were helpful, and it's useful to thank Robert, because it is hard to be on the hot seat. But hopefully I'm not too scary about getting that done. All right. So what does your reader need to know? Your reader needs to understand, this is the lit review now. This is the lit review chapter. When I'm the reader, what do I need to know? Well, I want to know what ideas started you on this journey. What are you passionate about here? What are you doing? And how does it fit together for you? I need to know absolutely how this topic is situated within your field. I need to know who else has said it was important and what were their circumstances. I need to know if there are acknowledged gaps between different pieces of literature. And that your study will fill. You don't need to point out gaps your study won't fill. Just point out the ones your study does fill, if there are some. And if there aren't gaps, then what is your study doing? Is it replicating in a different place? What is the different slant that makes your study not unique, but of value? How does this lead to your methodology? Because your lit review funnels your reader into a small place of understanding what you're really trying to get to, and then that's kind of spits them out in your methodology. Okay, another practical thing to talk about, organization of the lit. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is I hope you are writing your lit review, telling your reader what you want to tell your reader. You've designed this because this is your conceptual framework. These are your important theories, or this is how your ideas go together with your, this is all lead it from you. Even though you're using them and what they have done to talk about what is important to you, you're starting this importance. The reason I bring that up is because several of them will have talked about similar things. And if your point of view is all about them, you will have a tendency to write, if this was your spreadsheet, author A had this important point, and he talked about this, this, and this, whereas author B had this other important point, and he talked about this and this. You'll tend to highlight it from an author's point of view, and that is the fastest way to die at lit review. So how do you get past that? Well, in a spreadsheet, you would put all your references down one side. In the next column, you would put the main point that author gave you. Not the main point they said, but the main point as it impacts your research. And then you talk about the topics that you want to talk about. And author A, he included some things about topic 1 and topic 3 and 4. And author B, he said some things about topic 2 and 4. And author C. So now you've got the authors that are important to you and what they talked about in the topics that are important to you. And for each one on the right-hand side, you've noticed what that author led to you in your study. So author B maybe used methods similar to your methods. Author C maybe helped you craft your research questions because they asked questions of a similar nature. Author E maybe learned something that was important that made you think differently, and so you slightly did your study a little differently. So that's how you would put these guys together in a spreadsheet. Why would a spreadsheet be helpful to you? Because you can then click on the row that is topic 2 and you can sort by that row, and only the people who had anything to say about topic 2 come up. And then you can read through from beginning to end all the topic 2 notes a couple of times, and you can sit back and you can think about how you want to organize your discussion of topic 2. And then you put those people in, and some of them will be clustered all together in one paragraph, and others will be outliers, and they might be in another paragraph, but it's all under the same topic. You want to write your lit review by topic area, and you want your topics to guide your discussion. And then if a lot of people agree to some things, you make good use of group citations. Because what you're using the lit review for, and this is a big change from any other lit you've ever had to write up until now, you are not using lit to prove that you have done the work and that you know things. You are using lit to back up your ideas to drive your reader to your study. These people, they're just other names out there that have somewhere along the line agreed with stuff you're doing or are important to your thoughts. But Your topics are driving this. So, show of hands, please, with the chat box. Did that make sense? If you go to the website and you go to search and you search for literature, and you will find, I think that'll probably be the way that'll get you there. You're going to find that I have talked about how to use literature and spreadsheets. You might have to actually type in literature plus spreadsheets. But I've done this as webinars a couple of times. If you want really specific, this is how you do it. Now, do you need to do it? No, you don't need to do it if you've already got that kind of organization in your head. Another way you can do it is you can have topic 1, 2, 3, and 4 in your bibliographic software, and you can just drag your people into the bibliographic software. So there's a number of ways to get this kind of an organization done, but you need to think through this organization. Okay. Now, let's talk about methodological lit. You all have it. You all decided, and thank you for those who have raised your hands, that you all have methodological lit as you developed it, you read it, as you took these classes, and as you decided what you thought your lit wanted to be. Where do you put it, and what good is it? Well, you have two places you could put it. You could put it at the end of your literature review, and you would do so if there were things about your choice that directly impacted the conversation you were having in your lit review about how things were previously studied. So everybody else has done quantitative studies, but I really want to drill into the human lived experience of this phenomena that I'm studying. So I want to talk about particular use of a certain kind of qualitative research, and I'm going to put my methodological lit in my lit review. Or, as is a case of somebody I worked with, all of his lit was about foster care of the most traumatized children, and how those foster cares was a very upsetting kind of thing, and those children were very hard to work with. So for him to do a straight qualitative study would be to probably elicit all the things that are hard. And what he wanted to elicit was rather what was working. So he did appreciative inquiry, and he got to what was working. So he put the lit about appreciative inquiry in his lit review. Most of you will use methodological lit to back up your methodology section, the first two parts of methodology. You tell people the general aim of your study, and you use this lit to back up that aim. You also might use this lit as a justification for your sample or population designs, as I have here on this slide. Example is purposeful convenience sampling. That took some time, so hopefully most of you are the ones who are going to the open office hours that's supposed to be starting right now. But I'll be a little late today. Remember, your lit is the evidence of what is important in your study. If you're just starting this, your lit is the evidence of your significance. So if you are saying that your study is significant to the education or whatever your topic is in the United States, you have to have lit of a federal level. If you're talking about it locally, you have to maybe show that there's a gap in the lit locally, or so you have to have a relationship between the size and significance of the lit to your field, to your region, to your locale, to your topic, and then you have to look for those. And when I say, so the expert in your field will ask the questions on the left. Is the gap real or imagined? I've seen a lot of people tell me there's a gap, and I didn't see very much of a gap there. So you really think about that. And then the non-expert on your committee will ask whether or not you've ticked all the boxes and you've written it cogently and it makes sense how you go through and it's in agreement with the aims. You have to do them both. So plan that you are writing for both of those, and the handouts will have those. You can go back. the full story, and these are links from the PD to Education site. You can sign in and just follow these links. They're in the handouts. This is Professor Maria's work on Lit Review, and she did a beautiful job, and I've given you the webinar, the slides, the exercises, and the handouts. So if you really want to work through Lit Review on a step-by-step basis as you write it, she's fabulous. And then these are particular things. There's a checklist. There's talk about reference software for Alan. I put that lit up there. There's general content. And then there's the video on using the spreadsheet. So, and for those of you who are master's students, there's some particular things that'll help you avoid wasting time, etc. So you have the links. They're in the handouts. I won't spend a lot of time. So what are you going to do this week? Well, you're on a roll, and I've been moving faster than most of you have been able to move. I know that. And so that pace is going to change a little bit, but I wanted you to see how it all went together. So you're going to spend this week catching up. You may get to thinking, and I recommend actually you do some work that is the writing work of maybe your background or maybe your methodology, but you're beginning to plan your review of literature. And I recommend that you use the tools I've given to you here, the Logic of Design tool, and you're going to plot out a slide just like this one. Jennifer asks, so there's a 3-day weekend coming up, so you've got some catch-up time. That's good. Should we organize in Excel or Word? I would organize in Excel, because Excel you can sort. And Vivo is fabulous if it's a tool you know how to use. It's a very complex tool compared to Excel. So at this stage, don't go learning a new tool unless you're really good at that. And if you are brilliant, it'll be the tool that'll carry you all the way through. And I just want to remind you, this looks like this is a slide you had last week, but I'm talking about then of how argument in the background leads into conceptual design, leads into methodology. We only have so many concepts we're putting up and down in the air here. Every week we've unpacked another way of looking at these concepts. So go back into your other slides and see, and that's why everything's in recording. So quickly, these are the questions that got asked. Should most of the literature be from the last 5 years? Yes, most universities like that. However, if you have really old, great stuff, probably it's been republished with newer dates. Is there a limit to the number of theories that should be embedded? Well, yeah, you're going to confuse your reader if you have more than 3. And rabbit holes are counterproductive. If you can make the firmer the platform, the fewer the theories. So 1 theory, firm platform. 2 or 3, and then you're getting into ideas of how the theories play off of each other. You could write books on those things. So try to, if you can draw it out really succinctly, you're using this and this for these reasons, and they together give you this paradigm, then do it. But keep it short. Theory shouldn't take you more than a page or 2. You don't want to write more than that, because it's not the mainstay. It's the first smaller bit of the Venn diagram. Is there standardized style for writing a lit review? The answer is no, because it depends upon different fields. Do it differently. And that's one of the things you go back to your models to look for. So you have 5 models that we set up the first week, and you look now critically at how they analyze their lit review. Maybe the conceptual frame idea works for you. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe they used it. Maybe they didn't. You now critically analyze what you see and you plot your course. But you're doing it with intention rather than just because somebody said you needed to have all this stuff. So it should be much easier. How do you know when to stop gathering resources? When they all say the same thing. Or when you have plenty, when you're in this class, one of the things I want you to be doing from the very beginning is plotting your argument as to why your research is significant. When you have that argument tight, then you only need the lit that backs up that argument. And if there was lit that totally took a different stance, you'd want to know about it, because otherwise you'll get caught at defense not knowing about it. But you'll still be able to say, yes, I know that person over there, they says this other thing is not important, but their ideas are only seen by a very small, and I'm banking my research on these. I will look at whether my data agrees with their ideas. You can have that conversation during defense. I tend to get lost in a sea of related topics. Raise your hand if that's happened to you. That's one of the things that comes with being an academic, is that we like topics. We are curious people, so we get lost in them. I find it hard to organize all of the articles, especially when I do not work on them for several days. That's why you use the spreadsheet. Right now, that person should start thinking about what they want to say and put it in a spreadsheet. That will help. Or having groups in your bibliographic software, and you slide things into the groups. There is a lack of common measure for comparison among various authors. You compare on a number of things. You compare using the spreadsheet idea on topics. You compare by the research, the size of the research, literally the nuts and bolts of their research, qualitative, quantitative, how big a population, where they put it. If it's a lab, what their specifics were. You compare by research methodology. And then you use it according to how you need it used. So that's the lack of common measure, because all of you are unique, and you want to use these things for different reasons. And they're all valid. You just need to be able to make a case for the fact that you did it for these reasons, and you critically analyzed other people who did similar stuff for the same reasons, and it worked for them, and here are the examples. How do you know you have enough references? Because they say the same thing. I'm not sure of the linkage between my literature and my argument. What should I be looking for? The same as gaps? No, not so much. It's significance. So your argument is that your work is significant for these reasons. You're looking for lit that is in agreement. That's the linkages. But that chart I gave you, really, it should allow you to design linkages. And how do you justify older articles that you want to use because the information is pertinent? Well, you first look to see if that older article has been rewritten or republished. So maybe you can get what you want and a newer date. And then if not, you justify it because it's a seminal article, because there's something there that is, and there are certain authors that are seminal authors. And if it's a gray area, you put it in and see if anybody notices and if you get asked about it. So you do what you need to do to build a solid case. And if you build a solid case, the rest folds through. So if some of you are here who have had trouble getting through some of these hoops, chances are it wasn't the way you were doing it as much as the lack of solidity in the case you were building. But unless somebody pointed it out from that point of view, you just chase your tail trying to do the little bits they're pointing out without realizing that there's a much bigger underlying problem. And I'll use one person who's in the room as an example that a lot of trouble getting through proposal, and it turned out that she didn't have an argument. The whole piece went together. She had all the right parts, but she didn't have an argument that flowed through the whole thing. Well, unfortunately, she'd done a lot of work, like years of work, on getting all the right pieces together, but unless you have the argument, it doesn't hold true. Real fast, because I am now 15 minutes late to my next office hours. Office hours today, wide open. We just talk. Office hours tomorrow, in answer to woo claps first, and then if we have time after, we'll take questions from the room. Next topic up for us is outlining the chapters or the sections and how they go together. So now that we've got an understanding of it all, we're going to look at how the pieces flow together. And if you are in a field, I would appreciate it if you would put up in the forum one of your favorite, most closest to your study um, models. Just give me a PDF from one of your models, and I will use those PDFs to talk about how these 3 chapters go together, to analyze for you what an examiner sees when we get one of these documents in. And last but not least, please take this survey. So with that, apologies for running over, but it happens whenever I do live examples, so it just happens.